Hey everybody, I'm Aaron Simmons. This is Philosophy for Where We Find Ourselves, September 10th, 2024. Today we are going to talk a little bit about Plato, democracy, and why we should care a lot about what goes on at tonight's presidential debate. All right, I'll see you in a second. Before we dive in, let me remind you, I write 2 essays a week over at Substack. Mine is called Philosophy in the Wild. So go check it out. Some really fun stuff happening there about how philosophy can be put into practice in our daily lives. Would love to get connected. Free and paid subscriptions available. Thank you all so much for your support. Today I want to talk about how Plato's worries about democracy can speak to why we should be invested in the debate tonight between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris. Now, Plato, famously, is no fan of democracy. He worried that democracy, understood as basically majoritarian rule, would inevitably lead to our being controlled by appetite as opposed to reason. And when we are controlled by appetite, inevitably there is a slide toward tyranny. Now, how does this work? In all too brief fashion, think of it this way. If you want to try to get people to agree with you, to move in a particular direction, to bring about a certain policy, to create a group, what's the best way to do it? Well, if the goal is success, then fear and appealing to appetite is a really smart strategy. People are far more likely to come to the event you are hosting if you advertise, free pizza and there's gonna be movies and giveaways, because our appetites say, ooh, that sounds fun, compared to saying, let's get together to do very deep and complicated readings of Hegel's philosophy of right. Now, the difference here is not that philosophy is not also fun. It's that philosophy expects us to engage in rational discourse, in reason giving. Whereas getting together and having a party and eating pizza allows us to be able to rest easy on our appetitive nature. There's nothing wrong about appetites. They're crucial for a well-lived life. But when they take over and override our reason, rather than reason dictating how we deploy our appetites, problems arise. So when it comes to political situations, creating a coalescing group around a particular fear of that other group is one very easy strategy for winning in deliberative democracy situations, because the deliberation has now been eschewed and minimized and marginalized, and reason giving has been suggested to be a distraction from what really matters, which is the danger of those guys. So this structure, this strategy of leaning into appetites, creating communities that are defined by fear of the other community, and therefore marginalizing reason as no longer a social good, but an obstacle to fighting the battle for your group's interests. This is why Plato says democracy is inevitably going to lead to tyranny. Because when things get so scary, when things get so dangerous, when they are so opposed to what we know is right, inevitably you're going to then need a strong leader, a authoritarian model to stand up and say, I'll protect you, I'll take us in the right direction. So this move from democracy to tyranny along the axis of a slide from reason to appetite is why Plato says democracy is a disaster. But notice, in order to make that claim, Plato ostensibly is suggesting that people bring arguments about this slide to tyranny, like he's doing in the Republic. And bringing arguments about why democracy is a problem is inevitably then to participate in the very kind of social structure that would celebrate and encourage the giving and taking of reasons. In other words, to give the critique of democracy that Plato does is to assume a quasi-democratic social structure in which critiques can be considered. democracy doesn't have to be understood in this problematic way as just majoritarian rule, but instead we can think about democracy more along the lines of someone like the political thinker Rob Talisse, who suggests democracy is ultimately a space where we are self-governing individuals collectively working together in light of the best reasons available. This idea that democracy is where we give reasons, where we receive objections, where we consider different ways forward in light of the evidence available, that changes things. Because now Plato's account is not that democracy is bad because it leads to tyranny, but the argument that democracy is dangerous because it can lead to tyranny is itself a defense of why we need better democracies in the first place, to protect us against that slide to appetite. We cultivate and celebrate and encourage reason giving as what it means to be responsible within a democratic structure. Now, all that said, the debate tonight should matter really, really deeply for all of us, because it's not just about which policies do we support, where do we come down on this or that issue. It's a matter of who is inviting us or encouraging us to care about reason giving, to like the idea that evidence matters, to warn us against the slide towards appetitive anti-democratic tendencies. Now, likely, we will see problematic strategies on both sides, but it is the case for me that the current mode in which Trumpist rhetoric is deployed fosters a real resistance to reason giving as in any way important for democratic life. And that is why I think we should be wary of where he's trying to go. Again, we can disagree about policy. That's what democracy requires of us. But those policy differences can't be a reflection of absolute difference, where one side says give reasons and the other side says abandon reasons, just follow the authoritarian leader. It's got to be the case that whether conservative, whether progressive, whether independent, whether even interested in all kinds of non-two-party models, wherever you stand there for good reasons. And we should care about bringing those reasons to the public square and engaging each other about them. Only then will democracy live up to what it's supposed to do, rather than sliding into one of the most dangerous possible outcomes. So enjoy the debate tonight. I would love to hear any comments or questions or thoughts you have. Drop them here in the comments on this video, and I will think with you about why it matters that we love reason giving as the requirement for our deliberative democratic identities. All right, well, I'll see you next time, unless a piano falls on our heads.